Paul, welcome to the Rio Convention's Pavilion TV studio. You've been taking part in a panel earlier on this morning. Tell us a bit about why you're here and what you're talking about.
Well, this morning we've been talking about protected areas, and in particular the way in which protected areas contribute to our economies and our societies, not just our environment, how protected areas can have broader range of benefits to communities.
Give me an idea of a protected area. I have an idea coming back in the UK of our national parks, but give me an idea from an Australian perspective about what exactly you mean.
Protected areas can take a variety of different forms. They can range from protected areas that have been set aside as being just for wilderness values, where there's no development and are kept as close to a pristine state as they possibly can be, to protected areas that have quite a bit of human activity and involvement and interaction with them. Tourism facilities that may allow people to come close to nature and enjoy the benefits of nature. So protected areas can take a variety of different forms. One of the things we were talking about this morning is indigenous protected areas that operate in Australia. These are local protected areas managed by the local indigenous peoples, covering vast areas of country where the indigenous people are involved in caring for their country, protecting their country, and that has a whole range of benefits. It protects biodiversity and the land itself, but it also gives local communities an opportunity to be involved in economic development, to be rewarded for maintaining their land, to encourage them to find ways of bringing tourism and other services into their country, and so achieving a range of goals, not just the goals of biodiversity conservation, even though those are fundamentally important.
And speaking from the Australian experience, you've mentioned those areas, and I would suppose, not that I know that Ayers Rock may be part of one of those areas, but how successful has that sort of program been?
It's been very, very successful. Ayers Rock itself is actually in a national park, and that national park is managed by my department, and I have staff there that manage that park, working in close partnership with the local indigenous people. The park is leased from the indigenous people of the area. We've had enormous success in having indigenous people involved in ranger programs. Working on country is the program, and it involves indigenous people being employed to be rangers caring for their country. Also this morning we've been talking about a different sort of protected areas. There's marine protected areas out in the ocean, setting aside part of our marine environment to ensure that we conserve all of the values that are there, particularly the biodiversity values. And Australia has just in the last week announced the creation of the world's largest system of marine protected areas, covering a vast area of the ocean environment around Australia, and in particular a very, very large protected area in the Coral Sea, which is immediately adjacent to the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park area. So these are very, very exciting new developments in protected area creation and management.
I guess it's one step for a government to create what you call a protected area or a park, but how do you police it? I mean, Australia is such a vast country, it's a continent in its own right. How on earth do you police the great deserts or the great areas of savanna, or indeed huge elements of sort of marine life?
This is indeed one of the real challenges that we have in the management of our protected areas. And you're absolutely right, some of those areas are quite vast, difficult to manage, particularly with invasive species coming into those protected areas that need to be managed. So for example, in Central Australia, a very significant problem that we have, including in our protected areas, are feral camels. Literally hundreds and hundreds of thousands of camels that are doing great damage to the environment. They congregate around the waterholes and do a lot of damage. And trying to manage those pressures is very, very difficult. We do make very significant investments, but the challenge is always there. No one's completely solved that challenge. For our marine protected areas, also, you're quite right. We'll have to develop arrangements to manage those and ensure that they're being properly conserved.
How important is it to have a kind of compromise in the sense that these protected areas actually earn their keep, so you can, I guess, charge tourists for visiting, and the locals there can earn money, I guess, from protecting their local ecosystems? Because I suppose there is a temptation, if you're living in one of these areas, if you need firewood, if you need trees, cut them down and use them for farmland. So how does that aspect work?
One of our real challenges has been finding ways in which the creation of protected areas can actually provide real value to local communities. Particularly in this day and age where governments' budgets are under pressure, new financing sources need to be found. We need to find ways of bringing together protected areas with revenue creation opportunities. Not opportunities that compromise the value of protected areas, but actually give us the means and resources to create those very, very important and special areas.
And tell me about the cooperation around the world. Do park managers, do sustainability experts like yourself from governments, do you meet at certain points? Is there a knowledge sharing facility there? Because I suppose all parks are different, all indigenous to their own areas, but there must be elements you can share.
Yes, conferences such as this are a wonderful opportunity to come together with colleagues and share learnings and experiences. Every 10 years, the parks managers around the world come together for their major world congress, the World's Parks Congress, and Australia will be hosting that World's Parks Congress in 2014 in Sydney. That would be a very, very good opportunity for those parks managers to come together and share information and knowledge. At Rio+20, Australia is also hosting an important side event to launch a new international network of indigenous rangers who are involved in the protection of protected areas. This is an initiative to find ways of being able to better share experiences between countries, so we can learn off each other and pick up the best practices in our own countries.
I guess the final point, and this might not be within your remit in the Australian government, but you've talked a lot about the marine areas around the Australian coast. Presumably these only extend as far as Australia's sort of national borders or national maritime territories. How can countries do better to protect, the areas, the vast areas outside those borders?
Yes, that's you're right. Our protection only goes to the point of our jurisdiction, and indeed that's been one of the areas of discussion here in Rio, is paving the way for further discussions around protection on the high seas, an issue where there are a range of different perspectives that are going to have to be worked through over the next couple of years to ensure that we're also protecting those very, very valuable marine resources in our high seas.